Stand on your TV or you're receiving this signal from wherever you are. This is the Election 2022, a production that has been prepared to keep you up to date on everything concerning the elections 2022. We have been here since the 8th day of this month, looking at the preliminary preparations for the whole election, the whole process, the tallying process, and now we are actually at the titbit. We are at the end of, we are actually finalizing everything concerning the whole election. And now we are actually joined by lawyer Kennedy Marete, who is advocate of the High Court. We actually breaking down because there's a lot of jargon that has been floated about concerning the whole election. We have had a lot concerning the 50+1. We've had a lot of actually contests that have been threatened because of the outcomes of the various elections. We've seen that in Kirinyaga, Wangui Ngirichi has said that she will go to court to contest the whole election. There's also reports that in Nakuru County there might be a contest concerning the gubernatorial seat. And also right now, as they await the presidential outcomes, we also have the challenge of there is a possibility that we may actually be seeing a petition coming about. And on the other end, I'm joined by Wakili Kennedy Marete, an advocate of the High Court, to help us and actually give us also his perspective concerning the whole election that has gone on. Wakili Marete, how are you?
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Thank you very much for having me.
A busy week it has been with the whole election. I don't know, would you like give me a preview of how you've actually seen the whole process coming to even this moment right now?
So it's been a very busy few days. Let's say the last 7 or 8 days have been very busy because initially before the elections, some of us were deployed to the various constituencies to ensure that the process on the ground was conducted in a free and fair way. Not only as agents of various parties, but also as advocates of the High Court to ensure that in case there was any issue regarding the irregularities or conduct of the election that needed to be captured, it was captured in a manner that was okay. And when we went to the ground, everything went smoothly. And we are happy that at least people got to vote. And now we are here. We've spent the week not only at the constituency level, we are also able to go to the Bomas of Kenya, where we were able to represent various parties there to ensure that the verification process was conducted by people who were actually trustworthy, in that every vote that was cast was accounted for. All the forms that were, presented to the IEBC, not only through the virtual system, but also through the files from the constituency returning officers. We verified that all those forms were okay. They were original. They had the seals, and the content actually was the same as what was uploaded in the system. And we are also able to compare it with the ones that we had gotten from our agents on the grounds to ensure that indeed the voice of the people was reflected in the announcement that's about to be made by the national tallying that is Chairman Chebukati at IEBC.
And now, in a moment, actually, we are about to actually receive reports concerning the whole outcome, even the whole presidential shindig. But there have been a lot of issues concerning the whole process. Also, in some areas, we can't go by without saying Narok County, which now the gubernatorial results will be announced at the Bomas of Kenya by the IBC boss, Wafula Chebukati. Something that was supposed to actually be announced at the county returning officer's office, in the tallying center in Narok County at the Masai Mara University. Now, contests such as this, do you think like they ruin the credibility of the whole process of the August 2022 general elections?
Absolutely not. You see, the essence of having a process that has been not rushed. Everything has been done patiently, and the IEBC has been very clever to ensure that there is no room left for doubt. First of all, the people made the decision by casting their votes, and their votes are still in ballot boxes, which are very well, safely stored in various places, which are well known by the authorities. And the agents who are on the ground were able to not only see through the tallying process. People went in the morning, saw who voted, did the tally of the vote account of the people who showed up to vote, and then at the end of the day, there was the records that were kept by IBC in their logbooks to ensure that they have captured the number of slips that have been used, the number of people who voted, and all that stuff was done electronically with the KIMS kit being used to admit people to the voting lines. And then after that, when the votes were being counted, people were allowed to actually video record the counting process. to ensure that nobody can come and say, oh, these votes were not cast or not. And, during the voting process, it was a secret ballot, but when the announcement was being made for who has won, every ballot was displayed to the agents to show them this is a vote, it is valid or not valid, and it was done in favor of so and so. And then at the end of it, all the votes were accounted for, written down, everybody took notes, and then the forms were filled from the form 34 to form 39. And agents were allowed to take pictures of the same before those were uploaded to the system where IEBC is able now to say they have copies. And then all those forms were taken to the constituency tallying center where the receiving officers or the returning officers for all the constituencies were able to have all the forms which were taken from the polling station brought to them by the presiding officers. And then we also have copies which are inside the ballot boxes. All the votes which have been counted have been systematically set and put in the ballot boxes so that in case anybody has anything to say, there is not only electronic evidence or evidence that has been captured by the agents, but also the ballot boxes themselves and the KIMS kit can show all that evidence. So in case someone wants to come and say the election has been rigged or anything, they will have sufficient evidence to come and prove whether or not it was done, because anybody can make, this is politics. Politics is not a very honest game. It's a very dirty game. And anybody can come up with wild accusations. Maybe they have their own opinions and everything like that. But in the long run, it is the voice of the people through the ballots, the votes that were cast, and all the records thereof that have come to, with various redundancies to ensure that nobody, sabotages the whole process. Those are the things that will be used to make the decision of who has won and who has not won. Mm-hmm. Of course, where there was maybe like complaints on the ground, IEBC took time to let people, verify what was being said, look at what your agents are saying, look at the things that are being displayed on the locked, the sealed ballot boxes, because the ballot boxes are sealed. And then look at the forms that have been filled, look at the signatures of your agents who signed that they have witnessed the election. And if you don't find, that as sufficient evidence to show who has won and who has not, then you can go to court and get court orders to have the ballot boxes opened. And if they want to retaliate, they can retaliate. And if the court decides that the voting process was not legitimate, they can always maybe make an order for the process to be repeated for the various stations.
A very keen observation by you there, Wakili. And also, I think you have been able to note that this time around, you're seeing the IBC is moving in a meticulous way, a very careful and calculated way. So much, though, it seems that the IBC is actually moving in a very more so intimidated way. Now, I'm looking at it as in, is the IBC in a way trying to be and make up for the failings of the 2017 general elections in ensuring that in these general elections, contests will actually be won because they have been able to execute everything the way it is supposed to be done by law, by the letter?
You see, human is to error. And in 2017, some really serious lessons were learned from the process when the elections were repeated because of what was said to be issues on the way the IBC conducted themselves. And the IBC did not sleep on their job. After that, they went and learned from the mistakes. They learned from the lessons from those election petitions. And they were able to put measures in place that were able to enable them beef up the process in a way that made it very difficult for anyone to get away with anything that was not perfect. Of course, nothing is perfect. And I always say, like, in school, very few of us were able to get things like 100% in mathematics. I am sure I'm not one of those who got 100% in mathematics in the final exams. And you would expect a few clerical or arithmetic or typographical errors in the process where you're talking about 46,226 people being involved in the capturing of the process, the forms at the ground. Those the IBC knew that was a possibility. And that's why this time, when all those documents were forwarded, especially for the presidential elections, they were forwarded to the bombers. And we were given opportunities as representatives of the various parties to sit on a round table. All representatives from all the parties involved were sat on a round table with IT experts and the IEBC officials, and also the returning officers from all counties, so all constituencies, so that we could examine each and every form one by one until we've examined all 46,226 of them, to ensure that in case there were any issues in terms of errors, of typographical errors, or maybe the count doesn't tally, etc., all those minor issues, they were resolved. And the election was done on Tuesday, the 9th. And the Form 34As were the ones that determined who the president was. All the processes that we've been doing for the last 6 or 7 days were to ensure that the information that is going to be presented by Mr. Chebukati today is the correct information, and that the voice of the people has been captured in the result that has been announced or shall be announced for the president.
Indeed, Wakili. A very detailed explanation of everything. And we are taking a short break right here on the election 2022. We'll be back with Wakili on more concerning the whole election exercise that seemingly is coming to an end today. Stay tuned. Kenneth Marete is actually with us, and he's actually updating us concerning the whole elective process. Now, Marete, if you can hear me on the other side, I wanted to know, like, a breakdown is more or less necessary, in fact, from a mind such as yours, concerning the whole 50+1 aggregate. How is this come to, and just break it down for us.
An election process is supposed to be a process through which the citizens who are registered as voters in the country voice their opinions on who they want to be the leaders. And that voice and that decision is made through the ballot. In other words, that is to say, the people who cast their ballots, the people who go queue and vote, are the ones who make the decision as to who leads them. Now, that goes to say that, let's say in Kenya, we have probably like 22 million registered voters, but out of those, only 65% or somewhere around 14 point something million voters were able to show up and cast their votes. And out of those votes, it is only the valid votes that make that decision. So in Kenya, the law says that whoever is going to be declared the winner for the presidential seat is the person who garners 50% plus one of all the valid votes cast in the election. And we are expecting to hear the decision as to who has been able to be chosen by the people who voted within the next few minutes from Mr. Wafula Chebukati.
Indeed, a proper breakdown, and also something that we had touched on earlier concerning the whole meticulous process of everything that has played out. Now, looking at everything and the way the IEBC has organized its house, do you think we'll actually be finding more concessions? Will we see people accepting the outcome, or will it be going into challenges? In your perception, do you see us like moving to the Supreme Court in one way or another, or will we find the aspirants saying, I accept, and we move on?
Well, I would be happy to see concessions coming through in case, like, the candidate, there are 4 candidates who are vying to be president of the Republic of Kenya, and only one can win. Unfortunately, not everybody can win this particular race. Only one can win, and for that win to be within the first round of the election, it has to be 50% plus one of all valid votes cast. If any candidate amongst the 4 who are vied, in which case we're only seeing that 2 are able to qualify to go to that extent of saying they have achieved the other, we have other qualifications which are put in place. Like you have to get 25% of the votes cast in at least 18 of the regions. And we have several of them have been able to do that. So we are hoping that the people who have considered, we saw Mheshimiwa More yesterday considered, and that's a good thing. Unfortunately, we cannot confirm whether the rest will concede, and there is no law forcing them to concede. But there is a law that says whoever wins has won, whether the concession is there or not. And the law also says whoever is not happy or pleased with the outcome of the election is free to go to court and file an election petition to give reasons as to why the court should consider listening to their reasons as to why they are not pleased with the outcome of the said elections. That said, we hope that we'll have a peaceful process where those who have lost will concede, and anyone who's not satisfied will not incite anybody to react on the streets or anything like that, but will do the right thing of going to the Supreme Court to file an election petition within the stipulated period to enable them raise any issues, genuine or otherwise, as to why the court should nullify the election, if at all.
Indeed, and reducing the tempo from the moment that we're actually anxiously waiting for when Chebukati will actually stand there, give us a history 1, 2, then give us who will actually have taken to become the president-elect of the Republic of Kenya. I'm going to switch gears to matters concerning the youth. A group or rather a margin that I'm sure you're very passionate about. Now, looking at the elections that just the voting exercise, the one that was held on the August 9th, the turnout concerning the youth was quite something that was disheartening if it was laid in comparison to the campaign season. We were actually able to see that on the queues, the number of young voters was something that was disheartening concerning the fact that the tagline has always been there, the leaders of tomorrow. Will we ever see a tomorrow come? And maybe your perception concerning the whole turnout of youth voters in these elections?
Unfortunately, having seen the activities on the ground, it is unfortunate that we have started growing a culture where we do a lot of things through social media and online, but on the ground, we are not as active or as proactive as you should be. The number of young people who voted on Tuesday was very low. The turnout was very low. And most of the ones who were participating either because they had allegiances with the various people they were actually electing, especially local area politicians and stuff like that, or people who are maybe agents or people who are working with the various candidates towards trying to secure a win. And most of the rest were technically not involved. And it felt really bad to see a turnout of about 60%, 65%, and in some places even as low as 40% or even lower. And it was very discouraging. If you look at a place like Mount Kenya, where technically you would assume that the interest of the electorate was at the highest, the percentages of the turnouts are really, really, really low compared to what you would see in places like the Lake region or South Rift, where we are seeing 90-something% turnout. It's like people do not want to vote when their candidates are not the ones who are on top, and that's not how it's supposed to be. We are supposed to be a Kenya that is invested in our leaders, a Kenya that is invested in trying to control or have a say in who is in charge or at the helm of the nation. And when we see the youth not being interested in that, it becomes a question of when we talk about the leaders of tomorrow, if we're not participating in choosing the leaders of today, who will choose us in future when we decide to vie and be the leaders of tomorrow? Or will we have to wait for another generation of people to come who will now be the leaders of tomorrow, because the interest seems to be very low amongst the youth in the country at the moment?
Okay, and Wakili, there has been a lot of determination by various analysts who are able to actually be hosted within the Election 22 show right here on KUTV, where they actually put out like there is a show of frustration among the youth concerning the whole elective exercise, the whole power-changing exercise within the country. The youth are seemingly airing a certain message that they really are not concerned concerning the whole process of power changing that is legislated in our country, in our constitution. We have to go through an elective exercise to be able to attain leaders. But for some reason, the youth seem to be frustrated with the whole exercise. Do you, in your perception, actually look at this also as something that has been pushed about by the fact that even previous regimes have not been able to address the issues affecting the young people? So it comes to a point when it is actually electing, they see no need because whoever is in power, my own problems, the issues that I have as a young person are not really being addressed.
Now, I think in this time, I would want to speak as some sort of a defender of the youth, because you see, we are living at a very tough economic times in Kenya. Resources are scarce, money is not everywhere, and a lot of people would not prioritize spending their own money to travel to their various polling stations to cast and queue maybe for long hours to cast a vote at their own expense. Nobody gets paid to go vote, and if you cannot afford to spare that time or that money to travel and go where you're supposed to be voting, I wouldn't blame you. Sometimes even not casting your vote is technically a vote in itself, like saying you've chosen none of the candidates who've been fielded or who've expressed their interest to be elected into the leadership positions. So as much as it's not something that should be encouraged, it sends a very strong message that either one, the people were not in a position to afford to spare that time or the expense that it took to go cast that vote, or maybe they were not happy with the candidates who are there. And the thing is, unfortunately, that's how democracy works. Democracy means the people who are interested in leadership are the only ones who will be put in that position where you are able to choose between them. I cannot say I am interested in leadership by word of mouth, but I do not take the relevant measures for me to be able to put my name on the ballot. There are, of course, qualifications that someone has to meet before their name is put on the ballot, and there are leaders who didn't meet those qualifications, and that's why they were not even on the ballot in the first place. So there are so many factors which determine the voter turnout, and unfortunately, we cannot do much about it at this point, but maybe it would be nice to see activities from the incoming government that will encourage people to be empowered in a way that by the time we go to the ballot the next time, we will have people who are empowered, who are better off than they were in this, election period. And I hope to see better future, better voter turnouts in future, which will be like a vote of confidence in what the work of the people who have been elected this time have done on the ground. Because in the long run, it is the capacity that we put to the people that enables them to go vote and vice versa.
And Wakili, looking at the fact that you pointed out about the fact that you're not really paid to vote, but you may have to actually move from one place to another to be able to cast your vote. And I'm looking at it as in, let's say in forthcoming general elections, we're able to, because currently we have digitized the whole system a lot. Now, what would actually be the impacts of making it go a further step so that you could actually be able to vote on a digital platform? What do you think about it? Let me share this thing with you so that you can be able to maybe give me your sentiments concerning it. What if you are able to actually vote from the comforts of wherever you are? You don't have to queue, you don't have to do anything much concerning going right there to the station. Do you think it would change the turnout of the whole elective process?
Oh yeah, that would probably have like 90% turnout, but it will never work anytime soon in Kenya, because the problem in Kenya is not the lack of digital resources, it's the lack of trust. Like the reason why nobody will accept results from people who have voted through their mobile phones or through other electronic devices is because they cannot trust that that process will not be manipulated. They want to see a physical ballot paper that has been cast by a person correctly. They want to see redundant, various levels of evidence to prove that those votes that we are being told have been cast have actually been cast, and the tallies are actually not manipulated by anybody. It would be perfect to have an online system or some sort of a digital system where we are able to vote from the comfort of wherever we are. But I cannot see that happening anytime soon in Kenya because we do not trust each other. It is that simple. The reason why we have a combination of a digital and manual system working for us right now, and we still have to spend 5 or 6 days working 24 hours on tables in the light of cameras and people shouting all over, trying to disrupt the process, is because we don't trust each other. And it's as simple as that. And until a day where Kenyans can actually trust each other, we will not go fully digital. That is the truth on the ground.
An issue of culture. I'm seeing the perception of justice must not only be done, must be seen to be done, being affected in this whole elective exercise.
That is true. And it's good that it's seen. Then that way, at least, in case anybody feels uncontented by or discontented by the results, there is something they can go back to and verify. We have seen cases where candidates are saying the election must be repeated because they went to the voting queues or the polling stations with their wives and their children and their agents and etc. But they only ended up getting one vote because they only voted for themselves. Everybody else did not vote for them. So you see, a person like that one would never believe that the election is valid, because even when you walk with the people you believe will vote for you and they choose to vote for somebody else, you find the results are not as acceptable as you would expect. So if you do not trust the actual physical ballot, imagine a digital one. How far would people go to try and discredit that election?
Indeed, we have a journey to cover there, Wakili. And in your final sentiments, because we are about to actually come to the close of this conversation tonight, because actually the IBC, the timeline was at 3 p.m. according to communication from the Commission. of announcing who has taken over to be the president-elect of the Republic of Kenya. But currently we're heading to 4 p.m. and the press is yet to come through. Maybe in your final sentiments, you can be able to like even tell Kenyans what's on your mind concerning the whole elective exercise and your sentiments.
I think the thing that I can say was a bit of a concern to me in this particular election exercise is how, there was an element of trying to use social media, bloggers, and some media houses to try and maybe it's not campaign per se, but create an impression of what the results of the votes or the election process that has already been done were like. If we were able to, in future, to leave this decision to be, or this announcement to be purely done by the chairman of IEBC and the national tallying officer, or the national returning officer, Mr. Wafula Chebukati, it would be better. Because now, I'll tell you, we are a few minutes to the announcement and everybody thinks their candidate has won, apart from the Roots Party and the Agano Party candidates. Everybody else thinks their candidate has won. And finding the Kenyans in a situation where, even despite the fact that various international media houses are trying to create an impression of who has won by posting results that have already been displayed at IEBC as the verified votes, some people still want to believe that various candidates have won when Wafula Chebukati has not made that announcement. I would want us to have some sort of a law dictating as to how media houses work together as a team to have a uniform sort of report in terms of the progress. Because if today, let's say KUTV comes and says one thing, and then we have another TV station saying another thing that is different from what KUTV has said, and so on and so forth, we will have some sort of a confusion that will probably lead people to believe things that may be different and may cause some sort of it's a disuniform information or that has been spread towards the people who are consuming it. So if we could have some sort of uniformity in future, that would be really nice. And then on the part of the candidates, you don't expect politicians to change much, so let's not put too much pressure on them. I think right now, let's just focus on the media and the reports that will be coming out in the next election.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Wakili Kennedy Marete, for your time and actually breaking us down and giving us also details concerning the whole jargon in the whole election that is now coming to an end. A historic moment indeed.
It's been a pleasure. Thank you very much for having me.
Thank you very much. That was Kennedy Marete, an advocate of the High Court, who has given us time to actually break down the whole situation concerning the whole elective process.